What's going on, world? Welcome to another edition of Insightful Principles. You are now tuned in to another episode, and I'm here with a special guest of mine. His name is Karl Sona, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I actually got a chance to connect with this gentleman through my social media platforms from a mutual friend that we have, Coy Brown. And I did want to say shout out to Coy. He always seems to align me with individuals that are just like-minded and that are out here really doing some powerful things and that are really pushing Black excellence. And I think that we definitely need more of that in our society. And I'm happy to have him on the show today. And I'm going to let him go over his background in the introduction just because it's such a great story of him being a first-generation immigrant. I believe that he has a lot of value of just the American dream that everyone is working towards and that they're experiencing, whether they're coming from a different country or even if them being a U.S. citizen. Everyone is out working towards that American dream to create a successful life for themselves and their families. So without further ado, welcome, Karl. I thank you so much for coming on the show, man. How you doing today?
Man, I'm fantastic, bro. I'm doing even better now that I have the opportunity to speak with you again, Kevin, and to actually talk to this incredible audience that you've been over here at Insightful Principles, bro. Thank you for having me.
No problem, man. I thank you so much for you taking the time to come on. So to get this conversation started, for people that don't know about you, kind of give, a little background of who you are and a little bit more about your story.
Yes, sir, man. It's been a fun ride, bro. I actually just had the privilege and the good fortune of exiting with the medical device company that I started gainful employment with probably back in 2014 when I graduated from grad school. So I went to St. Louis University, man. I initially wanted to be a physician. My dad and my mom are from a small country in West Africa called Cameroon. So very early on in their journey here in America, my dad had decided that he wanted to try to become a physician himself. But one thing led to another. It wasn't very easy for them along their path because they didn't have parental figures in their life. And so my dad ended up not having the resources to continue through with school. And so from a very young age, bro, he would sit me down every Saturday. And when we weren't out hustling, trying to make a buck, doing all the different side hustles that we had, we would be at the table. He would be studying for some new opportunity and he would have me studying. So I learned from a very young age the value of education, and he beat that into me. And I literally felt like he was preparing me for battle, bro. Because when I wasn't studying, I would be doing push-ups. It's probably why I got a little cut here still. And he was honestly preparing me to become a physician. Truthfully, I think there was a part of my father deep down at his core that really struggled with not being able to make it himself. So he wanted me to try to make it. And so for a very long time, man, I really took education seriously. And I was like, I'm going to try to be a doctor. And, went through all the advanced classes in high school, got to St. Louis U, where I ended up declaring biomedical engineering pre-medicine as my major. And then somewhere around my sophomore heading into junior year, bro, I just realized that wasn't what I wanted for myself. I realized that I was going to very quickly run out of steam if I didn't have the wherewithal, if I didn't have the guts to sit down with my father and tell him that, that dream, that ambition, it wasn't me, man. So I'll never forget coming home. I think it was at the end of that first fall semester, sitting him down and say, "Hey, Dad, man, I understand why you want this for me. You want this for me because, it's going to lead to security. It's going to lead to financial abilities and so on and so forth, but I'm dropping out." And bro, he probably didn't talk to me for like a good week straight. And that was probably one of the most difficult and honest conversations that I had to have very early on in my life. So long story short, man, I ended up pivoting out of the pre-medicine track and I ended up getting a graduate degree. I found myself into the medical device space, as I briefly mentioned earlier, just through networking. And it's been a very, very lovely career from that point forward. But, I learned probably about 2 or 3 years or so into my medical device career that it was not going to be enough for me to solely be dependent upon a job. So that's when I really started, amping up my entrepreneurship journey, if you will, into another gear, just really trying to figure out how I could create additional streams of income for myself so that I could start to get this generational wealth thing down pat. And so I could start to show my father ultimately that, hey, I'm all right, despite not going, that medical route that he wanted me to. So hopefully that provides a little bit of context for the audience as far as where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and it's a very important conversation. I believe there's a lot of people out there, they go through life living through the expectations of their parents, the expectations of society, what the world wants, what their job, and kind of what you're speaking on is you really took a point to say, you know what, this is what I want for my life. I don't really want to go down the route of what my parents want me to do. And it's just great that you were able to find your purpose, because a lot of people, Gary Vee talks about it a lot. Like, you can't operate through life trying to please other people. You know what I mean? You have to do what you were created on this earth to do from the purpose of God. And I believe that if you keep him first and you stay focused on what genuinely drives you, you'll end up migrating to what you genuinely have a passion for and what you want to achieve in life. But I can speak to that, man. My parents, same way, they wanted me to go a certain route in life. And I know for me, my goal is to, have my own financial planning business. And, I remember when my mom, when I first told her, she was like, "You think you can do that?" And it's just like, I'm not even, upset at her. It's just our parents were brought up a certain way where they worked their 9-to-5s.
Yeah.
They were financially secure. They were comfortable, and they didn't want to step out on a leap of faith. And I just think that you have to have the faith, knowing that all things are possible when you keep God first. So I just love you sharing that, man.
And really, I want to tell anybody in the audience, you owe it to yourself and God, if you're a God-fearing individual, to go out and really see what you're made of. You see what I'm saying? Like, I firmly believe that God invested in all of us. I feel like he planted seeds of greatness, and greatness can look different for each and every one of us as individuals, right? But I feel like those seeds are invested within us, and it's up to us to turn a return on investment for the Lord relative to what he's planted in us. And you don't get the opportunity to turn that ROI without going out on your own and really seeing what it is you are here to do. So it's been a lot of fun, man. And sometimes, man, that means stepping out and doing something that is contrary to what your parents wanted or what your family members wanted for you, or whatever the case may be. But it's a journey that I encourage everybody to embrace, man, because that's really where life starts to get really, really fun and exciting.
Yep, I totally agree. So I wanted to get into a conversation with you on free time and how people should audit their free time. I know, like, there's many people out there like me and yourself that work 9-to-5s or that had worked 9-to-5s at some point. And on one end of that, you have people that they want to start a business, they want to have these streams of income. But the real question is how are you spending your free time? Are you auditing what you're doing from 5 to 8 a.m. or from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m.? Those hours are really what you should be paying attention to, because that's the direct outlier of if you're going to make those dreams in that business happen, if that is part of your goal. So I kind of wanted to hear you speak on that, of just how people should be paying more attention to auditing their free time.
Yeah, I think the first thing that people need to really look at is, what are your goals, right? Everybody has an expectation of where they'd like to see themselves 6 months, a year or so down the line. And for me, when I asked myself, what are my goals? It was so hard to actually acknowledge, bro, that the goals that I set for myself, they were not really in alignment with how I was spending my time. In other words, you can't say, I want to wake up and I want to have, 4 apartment buildings or whatever the case may be, and you're not taking the time to go out on weekends and shop apartments. You're not taking the time on weekends to go out and facilitate new connections with brokers that can help you find deals. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's interesting too, bro, because being a younger person, I realized this at about age 26. I just always told myself that, oh, I got the time. Like, it's just going to happen. It's almost like you're telling yourself, all right, like one day I'm gonna walk through the door, and very similar to like coming into your home where it's dark and turning on a light switch, things just happen, right? So I'm just, elaborating on this to give people a little bit of a gut check here. Like, you got to get real with yourself first and foremost now, right? So once you get that out of the way, relative to the time conversation, if you're a working professional, and Kevin, you're working, bro, I'm working as well too, it's so easy for us to just get caught up with the identity of that corporate professional that logs in the 8 to the 9 to the 10 hours a day. And all of a sudden we beat our chest and yeah, I'm the man, I just put in some hard work. And then you just come home and then you just pass time, whether it be Netflix and chill, whether it be Xbox, right? Xbox just dropped a new console or whatever it may be. And all those things are fine in and of themselves. I'm not here to tell people not to relax and rest, because rest and relaxation are certainly very, very huge to longevity. But let's look at some very pivotal hours of the day. And I'm primarily interested in the hours before 7 a.m. I'm talking about the hours between about 5 a.m. to 6:37. Those are the hours where I like to focus on the mind. And I think anything you want to do in life first starts in the mind, right? Like any good business, any good opportunity first start as a thought. And so I really encourage people, and I had to do this too in my life, to get up earlier than what they normally would and to spend some time really visualizing what your dream looks like. After you visualize what your dream looks like, spend some time attaining the knowledge that you need to start to build towards your dream, right? I remember when I started doing this, probably around 2018 or so, it was very, very difficult for me on the visualization piece even. Like, I felt uncomfortable thinking about what it would be like to own real estate. I felt uncomfortable thinking about what it'd be like to own a thriving business. And so that's where I really started seeking models. And that comes to the knowledge piece, right? It becomes so much more realistic for you when you see other people like yourself doing it. Or when you hear stories of people successfully knocking out of the park. So I can't overemphasize the need for people to go out and to find a model of success. You mentioned it earlier, man. You told your mom you wanted to have a financial business and she laughed at you. It's not your mom saying that, I don't believe that Kevin can do this. It's just a limiting belief, because so many of us don't see ourselves in positions to where certain things in life are for us. If that makes any kind of sense. So that's really where the mindset shift needs to happen. And again, I find that early in the morning, that's the best time to really get your mind right, to really get your knowledge right. Now, once the mind is right, and if you continue building upon, some of the new models that you're taking in and some of the new habits that you're building, I think it's so important for people to create extra hours after work or on the weekends where you're starting to take some action. You see what I'm saying? And look at this as an opportunity for yourself where nobody else is around to really pass judgment on the action that it is you're taking. I think so often we stay still and we don't move because we're worried that people are going to see us. You see what I'm saying? And so this is why I love taking time after work, let's call it 6 to 7 p.m. after dinner time or whatever the case may be, to start actually working on my website, to start my social media content for my business, things of that nature that are just very near and dear to me, that give me an opportunity to start to really build up. So that is what I really call auditing your time. When you can, at the end of a day, look at the things that you've done, the small little things that you've done to continue to build towards your bigger dreams. That's when you're starting to hit the right path. Does that make sense, bro?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I think you're very spot on when you talk about that 5 to 7 a.m. period throughout the week when you're really trying to prime your mind. You're really just priming yourself for success. And I had David on the show on previous episode, and he really talked a lot on that. It's just priming yourself for success. What can you do in the morning to set the tone for the entire day, the entire week, going into the weekend, so you are able to take those actionable steps? And there's also a great strategy that I was listening to a podcast this week, and there's a gentleman named Elrod. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's created a book. He wrote a book called The Miracle Morning, and it basically discusses what me and Karl is talking about, is really programming yourself for success and priming yourself in the morning time to accomplish that end result that you want, whether it's visualization, journaling, having silence, with your creator, just being able to review your goals, all of these different things in the morning time, affirmations, they all help be able to create that end result that you're looking for. So I think that once you get the mind right, you're able to create those actionable steps that lead you more into a growth mindset and get out of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the biggest suggestion or the biggest tip that I want to give people listening is, in the beginning, when you haven't done this before, it's going to feel unfamiliar and difficult, right? And I want to normalize that for people, because all too often we try something a couple times. It's not really like feeling like it's something that's innate to us and we just stop, right? Like, that's an indicator that you should continue on. And a way to continue on is one thing: intentionality. Just be intentional about it. For 30 days, say, yo, I'm gonna wake up an hour earlier. And, that's a great resource that you mentioned, how Elrod's book. Check it out. Pick one thing that personally, resonates with you, or that you're interested by. If it's the meditation, if it's the prayer, if it's the journaling, whatever, just one thing. Start small and just try to stick with it for 30 days. Give yourself a challenge. I think so much of creating anything great is just being willing and being courageous enough to introduce a pattern interrupt in your life, where you are purposely going against the grain. You're doing something that's uncomfortable to you, and you're like, no, man, hand over fist, I'm showing up for myself for this period of time. And that's where the self-esteem and the confidence comes, and that gives you the fuel towards the bigger things that you're working on, longer term speaking. Yeah,
I totally agree. Now, with many of your platforms, you're an advocate for encouraging Black men to just live a better life, and being able to eliminate those stereotypes that people of color experience every day, like me and yourself. And one of your platforms that showcased that is NGC Capital. And when I looked at everything that you all are doing online, from an investing standpoint, from education, and just really building a community of just Black brothers and sisters, it's really encouraging to see that you all are really touching the community like that. And I wanted you to explain the idea behind NGC and why you decided to create a community founded on Black excellence.
Yeah, man. NGC, first and foremost, is my family, man. So I started this company. Actually, it wasn't just me. It was me, two of my cousins, a couple of their homeboys and homegirls. So it's really 8 or 9 of us that started it back in 2016. And really, we were just like, yo, man, how do we as young Black folks get our money up? That was really the main premise, is yo, let's go get this cash. You see what I'm saying? And I think it was interesting because we were all 2 or 3 years into our jobs. There's a couple of engineers on the team. There's a couple of startup founders on the team. There's a couple of consultants that have their MBAs on the team. We're all smart Black young professionals. We all represent Black excellence. And we're like, yo, if we come together, we can probably start to break some of these glass ceilings that are typically placed in the corporate world and in America as a whole for people that look like us, right? So it's really been a beautiful movement of just coming together as community, leveraging group economics, as you would say, Kevin, and finding ways to learn more about investing, to learn more about wealth creation, pooling our cash together, pooling our resources, pooling our knowledge, and saying yo, let's go big, right? Let's take some positions in things that if we were just to do it on our own, we'd probably be too scared or not have the knowledge and or the confidence to do it. So it's all about just leveraging each other's skill sets and each other's assets. And it's been such a really great thing for my life, because no matter what we go on to do with the company, I look at NGC Capital as my own board of directors. I feel like everybody needs to have a squad on their side. If you really want to, play at a big level in life, you need people to, commune with. You need people to bounce ideas off of, people that are near and dear to you that you really trust. And so that's really what that organization has meant for me. And one of the things that we're most passionate about is we're very, very passionate about creating a template for how other people in the African-American community in America can also do something similar, right, with their family members, with their friends, so that we can all start to level up and really narrow the gap, right, that's been placed on Black people relative to, the wealth divide that has existed for the test of time. So that's really how it came together, man. That's a little bit about why we are who we are. And I'm happy to kind of get into some of the details if you want about what we actually do, what we invest in, et cetera.
Yeah, it would be great too to if you did kind of want to explain, some of the projects that you all have done in the past or what you're working on, because I love that it's just a collaboration of really narrowing that wealth gap amongst us and other households. I've done previous episodes on this, but I've talked about how the median net worth for African Americans is very low in comparison to if you look at a white household. And it shouldn't be like that. You know what I mean? And I think that when you have platforms like what you're doing with NGC, it's allowing us to be able to narrow that gap and be able to provide opportunities. So it would be great if you can kind of expound upon what are some opportunities that you all are doing on the investing side with the communities that you work with.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So like I said, the beautiful thing about teaming up with people is that inevitably people that you team up with are going to know things that you don't know, and you're going to know things that they don't know, right? So one of my cousins, she's incredibly interested and passionate about renewable energy. At one point, she dropped out of Georgia Tech. Like, this is like one of the most prestigious engineering schools in Atlanta. She dropped out to go back home to Cameroon to start her own solar energy company. Like, that's how passionate she is about renewable energy. So one of the things that we're very excited about, especially under President Biden coming in 21, is clean energy. Yep. And so we look at a variety of different ETFs, a variety of different independent firms that we can take positions in, again, being very, very bullish on the fact that the world is going to start to shift a little bit more towards clean energy versus coal, like what Trump has been pushing. So much of investing is being able to keep a pulse on new trends, that affect macroeconomics, new trends and new companies that are coming in to disrupt industries that are antiquated, that you could invest in early, right? Take an early position in and ride along with for the longer term. Speaking of newer type of emerging disruptive forces, cryptocurrency, this is a big one, man. Bitcoin just blew up this week. We've been investing in Bitcoin since 2016. And again, that was because we had one of my homies named Deji. He's a Nigerian, Australian immigrant. If you can imagine that, a dude from Australia that's also Nigerian. Long story on that. And he's been involved in crypto for a long time. Everything from the mining of the coins, so on and so forth. So it's been really fun getting to learn about the altcoins like Ethereum, like Litecoin, etc., that we've been watching for a long time. And like I say, guys, I think it's so important to start to really become educated and familiar with what it is you're investing in. I really discourage people just going in, and opening up a Coinbase account and just throwing cash at it because it's the hot thing right now. Like, really watch these things for a while and treat it as a company that you actually own. You see what I'm saying? Like you need to be that familiar with it. That way it's less of a gamble and more of a calculated hedge. So the crypto market has been very, very great for us, along with a variety of different stocks. So we're also in this space now where we're trying to learn option plays. Many of us like the option game because if you know how to play the game right, you can bring less capital up front for a greater return. Anytime you bring less capital and a greater return, what are you thinking? You're thinking more risk. So you got to really be able to time these things out and buy the right calls, the right puts at the right time in order to actually, be in the money. So we're looking at some of those things. But like I said, the biggest thing for us is the education. And that's what I really love about us is like, we understand that if we stay in the game long term, and we're in this for the long term, the money will come. So the first thing is not, the mentality is not get rich quick. It's let's get educated. Let's find sectors and spaces and firms that we really believe in, that we understand that we, if we own them, we would be well positioned to actually operate. And let's look for things that we can get on a bargain. You see what I'm saying? To actually then take positions and then kind of go from there. So one of the books, bro, that I actually want to recommend for anybody that's watching on video, if you're interested in investing, it's called Rule Number One, a guy named Phil Town. He wrote this book to essentially teach people how to find undervalued equities or undervalued assets that you can invest in. Because again, the whole game, and everybody's heard this, is to buy low, sell high. So he provides a very great framework in that book that anybody can start to implement and learn and actually execute upon in their life. So that book has been very, very helpful in terms of helping us build our investment thesis and our philosophy relative to how we like to invest, man. So it's an ever going and continual process, man, but it's been a lot of fun just, sort of learning more, man. And again, these are things that when I came into the workforce in 2014, I didn't know, man, because I wasn't an econ major. I wasn't a business major. They certainly don't teach you this when you get a job. And it kind of goes back to what I said earlier, Kevin, man. These are the types of things that, if you're not learning about this from your parents, which many of us aren't, right? Many of us aren't having these conversations with our parents. I probably learned to just balance a checkbook and get a credit card. Like that's all I really learned from my parents. God bless them. But if you're not learning these things, you sort of just tell yourself in the back of your head, all right, I'm gonna get a job. Hopefully it'll pay me 90 or 100 grand or somewhere around there, and I'll just learn. But you never really learn. You see what I'm saying? So it's up to us to be intentional with our time, find people and start to really learn these things, because otherwise you're going to miss out. And unfortunately, that's what I think a lot of our culture has been subjected to, where we've just missed out on this information. We've taken our money, we've dumped it in the incorrect places. We focus on liabilities versus assets, and it's not helping us in the generational wealth conversation. So that's, I hope everybody can tell how passionate I am about it, man. I mean, I just can't stress education and just getting with people that look like you, and that want to strive for better.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very interesting conversation, man, because I'm all about group economics and vertical integration, looking at ways of how you can build your communities for the better. And,
right.
The education piece is so important because, formal education will make you a portion, but self-education will make you a fortune. The school system isn't designed for us to be business owners, to be entrepreneurs. They didn't teach us this. No. So you have to take the education of really taking the time to learn yourself. And that's what we're saying all throughout this episode with your free time and the time that you do have, whether you are a working professional or you have ideas you want to capitalize on, that education, the knowledge and the exposure is so important, because not only do you want to get the knowledge, but you want to get the exposure with other people that can get you through the door to create those opportunities for others. So I love everything you all are doing with NGC Capital, and I'm definitely going to be on the website and looking at ways of how I can get involved and just learn more in general. So
man, absolutely. And we're going to be doing some private events here early next year. Obviously, it'll be virtual because of COVID. Yeah. And we keep it pretty casual. It's just sort of like, come on, get to know us. We do like little trivia nights. We do little investment type games just to kind of loosen folks up and get people thinking about investing as something fun, because again, oftentimes it can kind of seem like, oh, that's for the white man. That's like some white collar button up type stuff. And it doesn't have to be like that by any means, man. And again, it's a knowledge era, right? Anything you want to know, you can head up YouTube. Udemy is another one that I really like. There's tons of free courses on, what is a stock? What is an option? What is a mutual fund? All these different things that, folks may or may not really truly understand, that keeps them on the sidelines. So I just want to encourage folks to get in the game. That's it. Get in the game, stay in the game, and you'll get better over time.
Yep, I agree with you. So I also kind of wanted to go into what you're creating with Streamline
Yeah.
Podcasts, with your post production services that you offer for podcasters. And I know for myself, being a podcaster and being on YouTube, a lot of the work is editing and the post production work. It takes a lot of time. And sometimes that's what's required to create a well designed episode. And I know you're very familiar with this. You have your own podcast as well, and you're a co-owner with Streamline Podcast, and you help other podcasters with being able to scale their message and being able to engage more with their audiences.
Right.
So I wanted to see if you could kind of just talk on that and just how that platform allows you to be able to help other people that are in the same field as we are in.
Yeah, man. First and foremost, I want to encourage anybody listening right now that isn't publishing some type of content to start publishing content. I think in the type of world and type of society that we live in now, it's so important that you start taking a stance for something so that you can start to get known by people that ultimately you can help or that can help you. Like, bro, if I didn't start talking about something or even trying to communicate, man, I'm feeling like I'm hitting a wall in my 9 to 5. I want to do something else. If I didn't start talking about this online in a positive way on social media, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now, man. I wouldn't have you as a friend in my life. So I just want to first of all commend you, bro. Everything that you're doing right here is so beyond extraordinary, bro, because you're really creating a place where we can have positive conversations that we haven't really had the opportunity to have before. Mm-hmm. And I want to encourage people, like I said before, just to get in the game, man. It doesn't have to be polished. It doesn't have to be perfect. Start somewhere. And that's how I started, man. I mean, for like 2 years, I was just literally taking in and consuming content, man. I mean, I'm a medical device guy, so it's not uncommon for me to drive like literally some weeks 1,000 miles. You can only listen to the same Future mixtape so many times. You got to start taking in something positive, right? Tony Robbins talks about this net time, no wasted time, where you should be educating your mind on whatever subject matter to try to make you a better individual. So I started my podcast, I guess in 2019, and you hit the nail on the head, man. Like, yeah, I didn't really realize how much work is required and to actually turn it around and put it out there in the universe. Like, I thought it was as simple as, at the time, actually, I was using an app called Anchor. And I want to give Anchor a shout out.
That's how I got started.
Man, because I was just like, okay, just pick up the phone and talk. hit a couple of buttons, boop, and it goes out. And that was cool. That was a great way to start. But when I decided to kind of like take it up a level, I was like, oh man, you got to like edit it. You got to like clean it up. You got to put this and that there. You got to put it on a hosting platform. It became overwhelming. And Kevin, what happens when things become overwhelming? You start to stop, right? You start convincing yourself about why you're not capable, why you're not suitable to get the task done. So I saw that happen in myself. And coincidentally, I was in a mastermind with several other podcasters, and I had a group of people in that mastermind that I was really close with. So we would just sort of mastermind with one another, and they were all having similar issues. So we were like, yo, why not be the ones to solve our own problem? And that's really where Streamline Podcast came from, man. Initially, we created the company out of necessity, and it was just to take care of our own shows. And when we did that for the first couple months, and we're like, yo, it's actually keeping costs low. We can now just focus on our content. We have to worry about the editing. We have to worry about show notes for SEO. We don't have to worry about social media graphics for promoting the episode. All that's taken care of. We're like, yo, we would be foolish to just keep this for ourselves. Like, let's go pass this forward to other people. So it just took off, man. And we officially launched it, I think, in May of this year, like right in the middle of COVID, man. And now we're up to about 70 clients and continue to grow from there on. So it just goes to show that, you know, your mess can become your message. I think that that's something that is oftentimes, you know, spoken about by pastors everywhere. You know, what are you currently struggling with that you can try to overcome in your life, and then use it as a platform to show other people how they too can overcome it, right? And that's why, you know, I want to come back to what I said earlier. Start creating content. Like, you never know who else is going through something difficult. You know, you never know who else is a couple hurdles behind you, and you just overcame those same hurdles, where you can create a business, you can create a resource create a podcast, whatever it may be, to give them some resources and some tools to hopefully make their path a little bit easier. And that's what we've been able to create at Streamline, man. Our whole mission, bro, is to eliminate the fear that people experience when it comes to sharing and scaling their message. Everybody, like I said at the start of the conversation, man, I really believe seeds of greatness are planted right in here. So we just want people to show up with what it is that they want to share to the world, and we do all the heavy lifting, bro. So that's the company. That's how it works.
Yeah, and I believe that, it's so important for, our viewers out there. Just start creating content. You never really know what impact you can have on someone. And I think, I've had it myself as well. When I first started my podcast was, are people really going to want to listen to my message?
Yeah.
But I think that you have to get over that hurdle. You just got to put the content out there, and, you're going to get the results as long as you put in the work and you're looking at ways to grow. It's inevitable. You know what I mean? So I think that whatever passions you have out there, just start creating content, because the leverage that we have with social media, I think people really underestimate that social media is a free platform. And we have all of these other distribution platforms, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Apple Podcasts, whatever different ways you're streaming content, you can take advantage of that too. Just like you're listening to whatever your favorite podcast is, or your favorite audio book, you can do the exact same thing. And I just want people to have, more belief that they have a message that they want to share with the world. And that's why I started what I wanted to do with this show, and what you're doing with Free Time Podcast. I mean, it's really a blessing to see the growth of both you and me. So I definitely like everything that you all are doing with Streamline.
Yeah, bro. I mean, another thing, I'm curious, what was your biggest limiting belief with starting the podcast?
Yeah, so my biggest limited belief was I didn't feel that I was going to be able to come up with enough financial topics of just things in financial literacy. When I first started, I had a couple ideas in mind, but I was putting beliefs on myself that the longevity of the discussions I wanted to have were going to be limited. I might only had enough content for 5 episodes, but I didn't know I would be able to expand it to what I'm doing now. So I think my biggest belief was, I didn't know if I had enough sustainability with the topics and the content that I was creating. But as I did more research, and as I continued to just put more knowledge into my mind, just learning more, I just started coming up with things that, just kind of happened. I can't really explain how it happened, but just me searching for the knowledge is what allowed me to be able to create more content that is starting to create the longevity that I'm looking for. So I would say that was my biggest limited belief. What about you? What was yours?
Yeah. So I definitely had something very similar where I was like, man, like, I don't know that I'm going to have enough to talk about. Like, who am I to start this platform where I'm putting out stuff twice a week, whatever the case may be. So that was definitely a big one. Another one that I had was, how am I going to find guests to come on? Like, who's going to want to come on and talk to me, man? And for the longest time, I didn't commit to action, man. I didn't commit to reaching out to people. It was almost as though I was trying to like insulate myself from the potential rejection that never even came, because by the time I actually overcame that, I was very surprised as to the number of people, even like bigger name people that were like, yo, man, I'm gonna come on. I'll chop it up with you. Like, we can talk about this. We can collab, So I wanted to ask you that question, bro. I mean, just to really highlight the fact that, like, here we both are, man. We both have podcasts, right? And we both had some of these fears, some of these very, normal human fears that probably somebody listening to us right now has, looking at us like we're somehow special. We're not. We just found a way to overcome them. Oh. And here we are, man. You are not at a shortage of any topics. I've built a company just because I had a podcast, just because I was willing to get in the game. So sky's the limit, man. You never know what the Lord is going to provide as soon as you start taking that one step. So again, man, I just really want to encourage folks, man. This is all coming from love. No. Get in the game. It's a great place to be. It's better than the sideline. I'm going to tell you that much.
It's way better than the sideline. And it's crazy you said the guest thing, because I had that same belief. I was like, man, how can I really get people on the show? But I just realized that what really made me overcome that was I looked at it as a numbers game. You know, I had many people I had some people that said yes, and I had some people that didn't respond, or for whatever reason they said they were going to come. It didn't happen. But I think that it's all the mindset, you know, as long as you're continuing to reach out to people, and the more you create value with your content, people are going to see what you're doing, and they're going to be like, you know what, I want to have a conversation with this guy because he's really informing the audience. So I think that what made me overcome it was I just looked at it as a numbers game. I kept getting in the game. I kept reaching out to people, and my content is starting to at least evolve in what I'm visualizing for what I see the show going. So that's what I would say, recommendations to kind of overcome if you have those same beliefs. So I wanted to transition and talk about just the monetization of podcasting. You know, me and you kind of talked about this off camera about how if you really approach it like a full-time job, you can really create some income for yourself. And I wanted to see what advice you can give to other podcasters out there, or even strategies that you have used with your own personal podcast of being able to develop streams of income from your content.
So first of all, I have actually not monetized my podcast. I guess I've monetized it from the standpoint of I've created a company, you know, and people now pay me, you know, a monthly subscription for the editing side of things. So that's kind of an indirect way. But to answer your question, I'm definitely very familiar with different ways that people can monetize. And honestly, one of the biggest things that you can do from the jump as you're still building your audience, and maybe you don't have, you know, a large number of folks subscribing that would then lead to ad sponsors coming in, is you can plug in other things that you do. So for you, Kev, right, like you're a financial advisor, this is a wonderful medium for you to like plug in what you do with fidelity. Yeah. You see what I'm saying? I mean, people are already listening. They're tuning in. They're like, man, dude, Kevin's so real. Like he's giving us all this for free. Mm-hmm. He's introducing me to like other cool people that look like me that are doing some stuff. I'm starting to get more confidence in who I am and what I'm trying to do out here. Mm-hmm. Man, you know what? I do need some advice on how to like create a budget. I do need some advice on where to put my retirement funds. I do need some advice on how to hit it big in the stock market. Like, let me just give Kevin a call. He actually had a little plug in there. You see what I'm saying? So that's huge, man. And that can lead to providing your main source of income, some additional leads that you can then begin to monetize. You see what I'm saying? So that's the first one that I think people all too often look over. Secondly, people do this all the time. People create Patreon accounts. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I think you recently did this. That's a very simple thing that you can do as well, too, to begin to see some money coming in. So there's all types of ways. But I tell people in the beginning, especially people that are newer podcasters, like just get started. Be prepared to put your head down for the first 9 to 12 months. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be averse to looking at opportunities to monetize, but don't jump in it for that reason. It's very similar to what I was saying with the investing side of things earlier. Don't jump in it to try to get rich quick first, because that's typically how people like get weeded out. Come in with the intention to say, yo, I want to plant a flag and I want to see it grow and I want to see this thing multiply and ripple out to many people and positively affect their lives. And if you can do that, I'm telling you, man, there's endless ways, from merch to sponsorship. The list goes on, man. And I'm happy to follow up with you on some resources. Like there's so many websites right now that are essentially podcasting matchmaking services, where these websites will match podcasters with brands that are looking to buy space on your show to monetize or to, you know, ultimately promote their products. So if you can do a really good job of just serving your audience first, there's so many tools you can tap into from that standpoint of things to actually help you monetize and go on from there.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I believe that the foundation, the principle has to be genuinely trying to build your audience and add the most value you can to them, and looking at ways of how you can really change people's lives. Because when you are in it for the reasons of you really don't have no purpose if you just like, oh, I want to just monetize, my podcast. You don't have that drive. You don't have that why. So you have to start with that why. And like I said, the monetization will come. But I really love the advice that you said about the 9 to 12 months, really putting your head down and focusing on engaging with your audience, building your audience. And then those opportunities are just going to kind of present themselves without you really having to do a lot of work. Opportunities to start coming through.
Right. The cool thing about a podcast, if you imagine a funnel, the podcast is top of the funnel, meaning this is where people that are coming in, I call them ungated consumers, right? Like they're coming in from left and right. Like we don't even know everybody right now that's listening to this, right, Kev? But they're coming in and they're being introduced to you, right? And if you do it the right way, again, this goes back to the 9 to 12 month thing, inevitably they will start reaching out to you. And this is where you can start building call to actions in your podcast. They'll start reaching out to you, trying to figure out how it is they can go further, relative to the specific topics that you're talking about. In this case, we're talking about, hey, how do we build wealth in Black communities? People can only listen for so long until they're like, yo, how can I pay this guy for some information to have him personally coach me, right? And that's where you have the opportunity to maybe start a mastermind, or you can start like some sort of like a private community through Facebook or through a third-party site. I mean, the opportunities really become endless, but you don't get to go further down the funnel with folks until you really make sure that, you're adding so much value on the top, right? You're entertaining them, you're inspiring them, you're educating them. You got to do one of those three things. I think to really be a solid podcaster, you got to do at least 2 out of 3. To be a rock star podcaster, you do all 3. Entertain, educate, inspire. People will love you, and you can get them further and further down the funnel for higher ticket type opportunities.
Yeah, I love that. That's great advice. And I wanted to also talk on, just your real estate ventures. I think that, with you being in a multifamily space, that's some of the aspirations I have as well, with creating passive income, with being able to have, just apartment complexes that I can have in my portfolio. And you've actually used the strategy of syndication whenever you're pooling your resources amongst other people that you all have a common goal. So whether that's you putting your money together to purchase a 10-unit apartment building, I think that syndication is a great way to be able to get in the game and to be able to collaborate with others. And I wanted you to kind of really talk on, how you were able to get into real estate using the strategy of syndication.
Yeah, man, it's been huge. So I actually grew up around real estate, right? My dad probably had about 8 or 10 units in Milwaukee, Wisconsin coming up. We had them all in the north side of Milwaukee, tough part of town. We were the ones fixing the toilets, dealing with the tenants, trying to collect rent, man. I mean, growing up, it was cool to be like, wow, we own that building and it produces some cash flow. But I always associated real estate with a headache because it was always like a second job. I mean, we had people die at the units. We had people burn them down, like just problems on problems. So I was like, man, as I was coming up, I was like, man, dude, this real estate thing is cool, but I don't really know. And it wasn't until like 2017 where my girlfriend at the time, her dad was buying like huge apartments. I'm talking like 200, 300 doors at a time. Normal dude, like you would never know it. I'm like, how is it that you're doing this? And he talked to me about syndication, where essentially a group of people come together and leverage each other's resources. It could be money, could be relationships, could be sweat equity, somebody going out and actually like finding the deal, so on and so forth. But they leverage each other's resources and then open up the deals to private investors that can also contribute capital to take down these apartment buildings. And the beautiful thing about it is that in real estate, when you go at scale, and there's nothing wrong with a duplex here or a quad there, but when you go at scale, the property produces a lot more cash flow, right? Because there's multiple doors that you have economies of scale. So now you can hire a property manager to be there and to deal with the toilets, to deal with collecting rent from the tenants, so on and so forth. So that truly becomes a passive type investment. So I saw that opportunity. I was like, man, I got to get my mind right. So the first thing I did I started investing in education, man. And initially, I didn't have to invest anything. There are so many podcasts out there that teach you about apartment investing. My favorite one was Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing, a guy named Rod Cleef. And he talks about it in such a simple and systematic way, right? That anybody can pick it up. So I literally invested just hours and hours, again, being on the road, just learning about it. And then we just talked about podcasting and how you can monetize, right? What happened, bro? I heard that Rod was putting on an event in Chicago. So it was like, what, $500 to attend. I'm like, you know what? That's a worthwhile investment. I've been listening to this guy for 8 months now. Let me go meet him. So I went further into his funnel. I went and met him. What happened? I went to the conference in Chicago, ended up meeting my syndicator partner, a guy named John Kasman. John's been doing apartments now for 4 or 5 years, another Black brother. You know, we just struck up a normal relationship. He's like, hey, listen, man, I can tell you're pretty passionate about doing this. You know, why don't I put you on my list? The next time I have a deal, I'll send it to you. And sure enough, he sent me this deal. It was a deal in South Carolina, 172 units. I think it was like an $18 million purchase price. There were going to be about 20 to 25 other investors in the pot. And because I had the knowledge, I was able to look at the terms of the deal. I was like, all right, you know, the income looks good relative to the expenses. They think they can come in and they can add value by changing out countertops and different cosmetic improvements to bump up the occupancy, and they can drive rents up. Yeah, the deal pencils out. And again, this is all knowledge that I acquired from using my free time to invest in about 8.5 months of listening to podcasts and talking to people. I'm like, yeah, this looks right. I'm going to pull up my own capital, my own earned income to invest in this. And that's how I did my first deal, man. And that was a couple years ago. So it's been awesome, bro, because once the knowledge is there and you're having conversations with people, the relationships start coming, right? Now, John's one of like my good friends. We talk all the time. And anytime he has a deal, I'm one of the first people that he's sending it to. So this is a very realistic way for anybody to get started in this space is, you know, if you have the interest, get yourself in the conversations. Because once you're in the conversation, again, it kind of goes back to my analogy of getting in the game. It's just a matter of time. So somebody passes you the ball and it's up to you what you do with it. You see what I'm saying? So that's how I got started there, brother. And it's it's something that anybody can do. It is so doable. It's so doable.
Yeah, and it all started with you just taking the time to invest in yourself and to go to Rob's seminar. And then you ended up meeting your syndicating partner. And, you know, I think that this is a great explanation of the value of just building relationships and also just building a team when you're looking at different entrepreneurial pursuits. And, you know, I think that real estate is all about relationships, man. And
it is.
And the more that you're able to build an effective team where you can leverage your resources, your time, your knowledge, and your efforts, everyone can win. You know what I mean? So it's just great to see that worked out perfectly, you know, for you. It's going very well for you.
The best things I was going to say real quick, the best things in life are always a win-win-win for all parties involved. You know, for somebody in John's position who is sourcing the deals and he's looking to raise enough capital to close on the transaction is a win for him, right? Because my money is ultimately contributing towards him closing the deal, right? It's a win for me because I'm a passive investor, right? Like that money, I don't have to think about it. Like I'm going to bed tonight. I'm not even thinking about it. I'm not dealing with any headaches and I'm getting a return on that both monthly and annually, right? And then ultimately, bro, for the tenants in these buildings, right? Like when you team up with the right people that are operating from the right place in their heart, they're ultimately providing a better community for people to live in too. You know, these units are being improved tenfold compared to what they used to be. So I always say, man, in order for me to say yes to an opportunity, it needs to be a win across the board, right? I'm never trying to like give somebody the short end of the stick here on the deal. So I'll leave that at that.
No, that's great. And as we're coming to a close, you know, with the show and just also in 2020, you know, I wanted you to share your thoughts on a project that you're working on going into 2021 with Dear Black CEO. Can you speak on that?
Yeah, man. So I've been working with a coach on this over the past 3 months, man. And man, I've never had more epiphanies in my life over the past 3 months, ever, because I feel like back to the seeds of greatness thing that the Lord plants within me, man. I just feel like ever since I've been born, like I've been put here to do something to help a collective group of people. And for the longest time, I've been a little unsure as to who that group is, which is why I ultimately brought on a coach to help me with the process. But what I realized, Kevin, was, and this is going back to being about 4 or 5 years old, man, there was a time in my life where I felt so blessed, and I knew people in my family that weren't as blessed as me. I'll spare you some of the details, but at a very young age in life, I made a pact with myself that I was going to use my position to ultimately pay it forward for other people, just because I just felt blessed and favored. And so fast forward to COVID this year, man, I'm like, man, everybody's in scarcity mode, right? Everybody's like worried about their survival, right? Like jobs are furloughing people, jobs are laying people off, so on and so forth. I'm like, yo, Karl, you have to find a way to stay in a mode of creativity, because when you can stay in a mode of creativity, that's where possibilities start to show themselves, right? Versus staying in a mode of scarcity where you can't think past what you're going to eat next or how you're going to keep the lights on. And I get the challenges are real, but it led me back to that promise that I made to myself as a 5-year-old, where I was going to pay it back forward. And with everything going on in the media, where we see Black men and Black women literally losing their lives sensibly, in the hands of the police, police brutality, all these different things with the Black Lives Matters, I just realized that it was probably time for us as a culture to start to see more positivity versus negativity. Like, even when you hear Black Lives Matters, I feel like my head still goes to that tragic scene of George Floyd, you know what I'm saying? With that officer with his knee in his neck and him saying, "I can't breathe." Like, it's still a negative image. And for folks like us that look like us, man, it's so easy for us to see ourselves in that position. So I was like, yo, what can we do that shifts the narrative in our mind, where we see ourselves, but in positions of strength, right? Coming from areas of positivity. And that's where I came up with Dear Black CEO, where really the goal of that show is to get Black men and Black individuals in general thinking of themselves as founders and owners and executives in their own right. Like, in my corporation, I don't see any Black man at the top, man. I just mentioned that we just had a successful exit. We had a $16 million pot, and it was the owners that had like 14 of that 16 million. The last 2 million was, just sort of spread across people in my position and the other employees. And I'm not here to cry about that, man. I mean, I'm making some money and it's a beautiful thing, but it's just another example of, if you really want to level up in the world, if you really want to level up in life, you got to find a way to work hard to position yourself in the executive seat, to position yourself as a founder of something. And I think increasingly, especially in the corporate world, we don't see Black people by and large in positions of leadership, right? In positions in the C-suite, in the executive level. And I definitely know that there are people that are out there doing it, but where do we go to see that? And that's what Dear Black CEO is going to be about. It's going to be a platform. It's going to be a podcast where people like you and I can learn from successful Black entrepreneurs and founders, and more importantly, learn the process of what they had to go through to get there. And my hope is that if we see enough positive stories, we'll start to change our mentality of what we as individuals are capable of. And hopefully our actions will start to follow suit towards helping us become CEOs in our own right. So That's really it, man. And I've just, like I said, man, I've never had more breakthroughs in my life, and I've never been more passionate about anything, man. So I'm just working very diligently amongst everything else I got going on to try to bring that to the world and just do my small part to just try to change the narrative for us as Black people.
Yeah, man, this is powerful, and we need it more than ever, because kind of like what you stated, when you look at a lot of the big, large corporations, even in the financial world, there's not a lot of Black people in the executive seats, in the leadership seats. And even like when I had told you before we did this episode, financial advisors, you don't see a lot of black financial advisors. There are only 6.9% of black financial advisors all throughout America, the US. So it's time to change the narrative, man. And I think, and I know for a fact that with Dear Black CEO, it's going to highlight and put us more in a positive light instead of everything that we have experienced throughout this year. It definitely has shown that we're still stereotyped in many ways.
Yeah.
There's still racial inequalities in the workforce and just on a day-to-day basis, man. So
Yeah.
I just hope that we can continue to keep building each other and just creating a better society for African Americans and people of color, man. So I'm glad that you're doing this. It's well needed, man. It's well needed.
Man, absolutely, bro. I appreciate you, man. And I just think it just takes more of us being willing to help one another out, man. I mean, I'm just, there have been so many times where growing up in Milwaukee, super segregated city, man, you like see a black person and they appear to be doing very well and you like double take. And I'm like, why am I like double taking? Like it's something that's like not supposed to be what it is. So it's just time to clean that up, man. You see what I'm saying? Like it's time to normalize the excellence that lives in all of us, bro. So that's what it's about.
Yep. I totally agree, man. So I wanted you to share with our viewers like how they can connect with you and learn more about your platforms.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So I think January 15th on my website, karlsona.com, I am going to be releasing a very, very special video. It'll be like a 2.5 minute video, and I won't go into the details, but it's about to be like a hitter. And people can go ahead and actually leave their email address on the website landing page for that video to come to them. And then that'll actually then lead to a special campaign that will keep them informed on Dear Black CEO, the launch, how they can subscribe, how they can get involved, so on and so forth. But if you want to reach out to me, man, I'm super personable. I'm at karl.sona on Instagram. I'm fairly active there, so people can always reach out. Feel free to DM or whatever, man, and I'll do my best to, engage. Because like I said, it just takes us being willing to help one another out, man. And it all starts with a conversation. So I definitely like to keep it going however I can.
Yeah, no, man, you definitely right about that. And I'm gonna put all of Karl's show notes, all of his links in the show notes, so you all can be able to connect with him on his website and being able to get in touch with him through his social media as well. And for Insightful Principles, I'm going to put the link tree in the show notes, so you all can be able to connect with me through my other outlets with streaming this content. As well as my Patreon page. So I thank you everyone for your support with this journey with Insightful Principles. And I thank you so much, Karl, for coming on the show. I appreciate all of the insight that you gave. It was just a valuable conversation, man. And I really appreciate you coming on, man.
Yeah, bro. Honestly, I appreciate you, man. I'm super happy we connected, bro. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. Well, I want to tell you all, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Insightful Principles, and take care.